Hey, by the way, before we go on, how are you guys? What's going on?
Man, it's been crazy. So since we had you on last, we've created this Thursday night live show, which is ATG Live, which we do usually, but we're doing it here tonight on Podathon. It's this great community of people, whether it's people who we see on the big screen like yourself, or people behind the scenes, or friends of ours who Nick and I have become best friends, and we've only met a couple times because we've met through Star Wars, and that's just so important and so great.
And you guys are living in different prisons, so it's hard for them.
That's true. That is true.
That's right.
Look, I will, whenever you ask, I'm on. I mean, this is the thing: the opportunity to become friendly with guys like you and that are sincere, that are really nice. I mean, everybody. I haven't met, although it's so funny that you say that, because every so often, I was just at a quinceañera, right? A good friend of ours had a double quinceañera.
Nope.
And his twins, and so it was like a quinceañera and a quinceañero, which guys usually, I guess, boys usually don't have it, but I mean, you have twins anyway. It was so beautiful, and my buddy Dennis, he's the dad. It was incredible. Yeah. And I'm sitting there, and the pediatrician for his kids, he has 7 kids. Guy was so nice and so sweet. And he's like, hey, by the way, I know who you are. And all these people are coming over and asking for pictures. It's like so sweet. And he goes, I know who you are. And I'm like, oh, you're a genius. You figured it out. And he goes, and then he goes, what's going on? What happened with episode 8? I hated it. It was the worst. Like, everybody has a strong opinion. And then I've heard the opposite. And then I've heard, it's exactly right. And I think it's because Star Trek's the same thing. These people are really smart. It's a very personal thing. It's a personal thing for me. I grew up with this.
Yeah.
And and it's the mythology and the lore, and like thinking where the characters could go, where they came from, agreeing and disagreeing with the story. I don't know. It's the best. I'd rather be a part of something. And I obviously had a small part, but I'd rather be a part of something that evokes that kind of reaction and emotion and intelligence than be a part of something where it's like, what was that? Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. I've almost forgot about that.
It may seem really silly, but the best moment for me has been watching my kids enjoy Star Wars and watching it with my kids. My dad watched it with me. I get to watch it with them. I'm building, I built this Boba Fett costume with my son. And I think that shared experience of like, oh, this is something that was in my life and it's in their life. And it just feels really special. And again, because it's not forced, I'm not making them watch it. I'm not making them be connected to it. I feel really, I don't know, that to me, from when I look on Star Wars now, that took on a whole new meaning for me.
Why is it, do you think, that nostalgia plays such an important role in Star Wars fandom? And is it a dangerous thing at times?
No, it's not dangerous at all.
Never dangerous.
I think it's only a plus, and when done well and when done right. And I'll talk about that in a second. But I think, to answer your question, like, nostalgia is a powerful force in everything in life. We all get older. I notice that your beard is gray.
Yeah, it's white. It's
white, gray. Exactly. I've got some of that in what hair that I have left.
Yes.
And, but whether it's Star Wars or anything else, I mean, the stuff that we loved when we were kids will always be powerful. And Star Wars was, so all-encompassing for me as a kid. When I see those characters, when I see those elements pop up in the new ones, it just strengthens that connection.
Yeah. Does it ever feel like they're leaning too much into that? I know we talked about how, nostalgia is not it. Maybe a better way to put it is, an example of it being done really well is the Teak flying the little ferry back and forth. In Rogue One, when Dr. Evazan is on the streets, that felt a little like, hey, look, it's that guy from the cantina. Remember him? So
what really worked for me with the nostalgia in Rogue One was just going, oh, we're at Yavin Base.
Yeah.
Oh, look at the hallways on the, Death Star, or whatever it was. Like, that kind of visceral feeling of, oh, we're back in that world.
A question I've asked a couple people lately who are in a role where they get to speak to the actors and the creators of the stuff that we love. How do you, and I'm going to ask this having watched you almost every interview, it must be hard to separate the fan from the journalist. And so do you do that? How do you manage that so that you got to be you, right? I mean, you're always Ash, but
yeah.
How do you manage that so you're not totally fangirling out and getting your work done?
I think the one thing that I've struggled with, and not so much with Star Wars, but it's been with other things that I've been like passionate about over the years, is there's a point where you start watching stuff, like I start watching TV or movies and stuff, and I'm like, I can't calm down and watch this because I feel like I'm working. I have to constantly be like dissecting it. I mean, I'm sure you guys get this with the podcast sometimes when you're watching Star Wars stuff. You're like, oh, what can we talk about? What are our news angles? What are we gonna like dissect? Right. So it is kind of hard to like not make it feel like work. But at the same time, there's so much passion behind it. Like we can talk. I know we're gonna talk about this a little bit later, but like John and Dave, for example, when it comes to the Mandalorian stuff, they make you so involved so early on that you just feel. They make you feel a part of the team to the point where you are so passionate and happy to be a part of it. And so when I get to that point, I'm just like, I just want to ask what I want to know as a fan. If I try to like sit there and be like, what does everybody want me to ask? I'm going to get way too in my head. I'm going to ask kind of silly stuff or stuff that's not going to work for me. I just say what I really want to know. And a lot of times to my, it's a blessing and a curse. A lot of times things just come out of my mouth and I'm like, why did I say that? And then it goes viral.
I was at the Acolyte premiere, in person. And the only reason I say this is because it informs, some level of what I believe initial interest was, not just from people that were regular fans, but the humans that participated in the program itself. It was kind of a deal, for lack of a better term. And, people like Amandla, Manny, and so on, people who have become sort of stars in a mini way, they were all there. It was all very much a full-blown operation within what I'll just call the Star Wars industrial universe, cinematically. And look, when I first heard the news, I was bummed for a couple reasons. Number one, I just felt that everybody kind of thought, based on what was on the screen, that it's going to be really difficult to abandon such a good storyline because so many different branches of a tree, tentacles from a squid or octopus, or tectonic plates, even, if you will, to insert whatever metaphor you want here, had been grown, squirmed, or shifted in a way that made this very interesting. And this was YA, for lack of a better term, young adult sort of literature adapted to what is effectively the television screen.
Speaking of characters, and this may be the shooting fish in the barrel question. Obviously, with Book of Boba Fett, we get Chrysanthemum in live action. Begs the question of the other characters you worked on: is Afra the one that you want to see in live action, or is that such a precious, like sometimes we have our hero built up in our mind. We have that person like, well, I don't want to see what they look like because I don't want it to ruin, what I've created. Is she the one? Who else do you want to see in live action that you've worked on?
Yeah, it's interesting because when you're working on an IP that's as big as, anything owned by Disney is, Star Wars is factually Marvel. You do understand that you don't own these characters, and that at a certain extent you have to give them up, right? You have to let them fly on their own, and they don't belong to you anymore. They belong to the world, and they belong to the corporation they're in. Like, I hope she makes it to live action or animation, or better yet, a video game. I think she was made to be a video, the star of a video game. But she could absolutely hold her own Disney Plus show. I like to remove myself from pontificating on these things as much as possible, just solely because I I think the best expectation is no expectation, because then you can't be let down or disappointed.
It's fine to not like something. It's totally fine to not like something. But the entitlement of, and I don't want to cause any heat because maybe y'all are friends. I don't know. But this Star Wars theory motherfucker, but here's my problem with him. Like, everything don't have to be made for you. And it's totally okay if it's not. But just like, go watch something else. And to hear these people talk about it, the last 9 things Star Wars has put out, they've hated. I gotta tell you something. Go find something else, motherfucker, because this shit ain't for you anymore. So at this point, you are purposefully watching something you don't like, which makes you a masochist. So go, instead of buying $30 tickets one after another, pay a lady one time $100 to step on your balls while you wear a gag, and then go to a therapist and be done with it. I genuinely don't believe that he believes half the shit that he says. You know what I mean? Because I don't think that he's a complete moron, because he puts out I think the stuff he says is shit, but it's all well-made shit.
When it comes to navigating the fandom community and trying to like tiptoe over the negative and the toxic discourse that's kind of way too pervasive right now, to the people that say just ignore it, I would say, yeah, you're right. For the average Joe in the fandom community, ignoring it is the best option. That's the best way to snuff out a fire, is to deprive it of oxygen. However, having said that, the larger your platform becomes, the more your following increases, the louder your silence gets too. And so I feel like if I am in a position to make a statement of my own to counter that narrative in some way, it would not be responsible of me to let that opportunity go by, since I have a reach of thousands of people, It's like I said before, why should he be the only one to have any fun here? If you're just some guy, you could say whatever you want. Who's going to be standing around to listen to you? It's when you have a larger following, though, it actually matters what you say, which is kind of the whole issue here, right? In the first place.
Yep.
And I'm on a smaller scale than that. I don't have millions of followers, but I do have a couple tens of thousands. And I think that with that comes the obligation to, follow my own code of ethics. And I don't feel like sitting idly by while statements are made that, that damage other people and their enjoyment of Star Wars. Star Wars is for everybody, and it should be.
Absolutely. It almost feels like there is a responsibility to go, I have a larger voice, so yeah, I should say something. Where do you come down on that?
Oh, I think you should absolutely say something if you want to say something, and if you can deal with the backlash. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, I've had a couple of YouTubers reach out to me on DMs after the Charmin Obey-Chinoy incident, and then they were like, how do you deal with this? And I'm like, this is the game. If you're going to speak out loud and you're going to be opinionated, you've got to expect a backlash, and you've got to be sure you can handle the backlash. It's not easy, which is why I said my piece with Charmaine Obey-Chinoy stuff. And I will say my piece again down the road. I don't need to name them because they will find it. And so I don't need to name them. But I do think if people want to name them, I think they should and have every right to do so, because they will name you if they feel like it. And you just have to be ready to handle the backlash. And I do think, though, I'll say this, guys, I do sense that it's changing. I sense that the wave now is pushing back on these crybaby anti-woke people, that the wave is pushing back farther and farther and pushing them away, because people are kind of getting done and sick of toxicity. And they're leaving the anger behind, and they just want to enjoy things again. And I think that's what we're seeing now recently. And I think they sense it too, which is why they're becoming crazier and crazier with some of their takes, and angrier and angrier with some of their takes, because they see that their money is getting affected by the pushback.
I feel there was a lot of phoniness exposed during the writer strikes. And again, I was not directly involved, so I also don't know. I mean, I would have just covered everything. So I'd been like, I'm not a writer. I'm speaking as a fan. I'm talking about a show that I like because that's what I need to do, and we should still watch it because those people still worked very hard, and we should still watch the show. And also, they should also be paid more if they are making them lots of money. Both things can exist. I feel like a lot of podcasters, some of them are very successful and also lovely people on a personal level, the people that I've met. I feel there's a lot of, I'm just going to say how great Star Wars is and never critique it because I like my free gifts. I've been sent promotional boxes before. It's a lovely thing. I like to be invited to red carpets. I like to get this. I like my Twitter exposure. I like those things. And I'm going to play the game to get there. And if that's what you want to do, that's cool. I'm really not making a comment on that. That's your prerogative. But I feel there was something very phony and shady and something I did not like in I stand with the Writers Guild and I stand with SAG-AFTRA and we will not be talking about these things. And again, don't come listen to me for perfect facts and dates. So that was on a Tuesday, right? And then Wednesday, everything was settled. And boom drops every podcast episode they did because they didn't stop working. They didn't stop talking about it. They actually didn't really stand by them. They were doing the PC game, and then their Instagram feeds and Twitter feeds filled up with like 500 pictures of every video that they made because they weren't actually really standing up against anything. You were just trying to play the PC game of you're playing optics. You didn't actually, you weren't true, you weren't honest, and you weren't being authentic. And if you feel upset by that and you're listening, then maybe you should look in the mirror and go, oh, am I upset because maybe you made a point? Or no, whatever, because both things can happen. But I think listeners noticed that, and I don't think people appreciated it.
Fandom is so stupid in a good way. It's grown men and women and whoever buying toys and having posters hung up on their wall and talking about fictional things. It's not a serious thing. It's supposed to be fun. And don't get me wrong, I'm not beyond bitching about fandom. I think my most recent video was like a 15-minute video of me moaning about the something to do with Spider-Man universe that Sony's doing. So I'm not above it. I'll complain. But some people, as we'll discuss, that their entire MO is just that's what they live for. That's they enjoy it. That's where they're finding their joy is complaining. And I just don't get that. I am all for complaining in a fun way. But when complaining just becomes, I am here to complain, I'm going to complain, that's what I'm here for. You're taking the fun out of it, man. Like, have some fun. Yeah.
So that when we talked to Paul Scheer a couple of weeks ago, he said Star Wars is like the Cheesecake Factory. It's the biggest menu on earth, and there's something literally there for everybody. Order the one you want. Don't order the one you don't want. Just order the one you want.
I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm just picturing who Star Wars theory. I'm just picturing him sitting in a Cheesecake Factory, going there every day, ordering what he hates and just force feeding it to himself. This is awful.
Who decided to put pistachio on this? This is awful. I blame Kathleen Kennedy.